Hey everyone. So around this time, you're probably done with your 3D and you're going to take it into Photoshop and, finalizing it. So I just made this small example where we're going to go through the layers and I'm going to explain to you what my thought process is and how you can, tackle photo bashing or image making like these. So the first thing I did is I made a folder on top of everything and I called it VFX. And what this basically does is I'm just color grading everything on top so that if I put any photos underneath this folder, it's already color graded in the direction that I want. So for this, I used like stuff like photo filter, color lookup, color balance. And what I base this on is usually I take like a movie screen cap and I try to see which colors they use and then try to emulate that. And on top of everything, I have a lighten layer. And what that basically does is, with this, I'm trying to kind of push out all the dark values around these corners because we don't want those. The reason we don't want those is we don't want the eye to get distracted too much when there's a lot of harsh values around the corners because this is the area that we want to look at. So once we're done with the VFX, let's go through the layers. Let's see. So the first thing I did is just select this part of the image. Let me just redo that again. So we selected this, and basically what I'm doing right now is I'm going into the curves and I'm pushing down the values of the darkened part and pushing a little bit off of the white parts. So just so that what I'm basically doing is, so if you have a range of, pure dark in your image and then white, what I'm doing is I'm kind of trying to, push these together so that there's not a lot of contrast within that area. So everything that's too dark and everything that's too light is coming towards each other and to a gray area. And that's what I did right now with this one, as you notice. So we push that back. And then this one, same for here, because for this one, I noticed when there's light coming from that area, that means that this side is darkened up, obviously. So what I'm trying to figure out right now, what my eyes is trying to figure out is, all right, this is the light point and it's coming in like this. And how does the light influence that? And thinking like this is thinking all about bounce lights and, like when you basically every single object in your scene should kind of look like this, the basics, where maybe there's a reflection around this area, this is the main light source maybe, and there's obviously some bounce light, and then in the middle of all, there's some harsh shadows. Just so we see like the 3D form of every single object within your scene. And that's my thinking while I'm trying to photo bash or trying to paint over these images. So the next step is I took this texture from textures.com and I put it on a soft light. And, this is one of those things where a lot of people think like, oh, it matters on which one you do. Like, is it on light in or screen or whatever? It doesn't really matter. The trick about this is knowing what is the realistic look of it. So with that, I mean, obviously doing your reference research and kind of looking at, all right, how does it look like and how can I try to emulate that realism into my own image? So with this one, I tried to not mess around with the values, as you noticed, and kind of softly blending it in. And let's see, the next step is pushing the lights here, because obviously this is where light is coming from, and all I did is I just copied these parts from the image, and what I basically did is I just pushed them up with Control L, which is for levels, and then double tap, and then I played with the blend if underlying layer and slowly chipping it in like this. Something like this is what we want. Cool. And then I made a mask on top of it. and then kind of like, forcing out the edges that is not hit by the light as much. So around the corners and stuff. You see, and then right now we can even push it more. So as you notice, like I'm being very careful with how much I grade it or how much I play with the values and levels, and just take my time while doing that. And then the next one is, let's see. So I lighten up the floor because obviously there's light coming from this area, and I just cut out this form here, this shape here, and let me check, and the shadow part here. And you'll see in a moment what I did with this. And basically I just pushed it even more. And then here what I basically did is I just took this area, I copied that, and then flipped it vertically, and then put it on top of the lighten layer that we had, which is this one. If I put it, and it's on normal, wait here. Yeah, it's on overlay. If I put it on normal, it's going to look like this, obviously, but let's just push it back, just so there's a bit more wetness, which, just adds to the overall kind of vibe that we're looking for, the abandonment, some rain maybe came in, some wetness and stuff. And just also what I love about, like, reflections just adds another 3D dimension or element to your image itself, instead of the flat plane that we had before, which is like this one. And then what I did is I darkened everything out except for the window area around this corner, or with the entrance, sorry. And then I popped out the entrance a bit more with the curves, and then same logic, pushing and playing and kind of seeing what works best for us. And as you notice, like I pushed all the darks out here, everything is kind of muted. Only around the focal point, it's kind of, there's a lot of strong contrast. And let me take you to an example for this. So this is a example that I made for my lectures, which basically says each material has its own local value. And with this in mind, you can start to group value your objects in the image. The more simple your values are, the better readability of your image. So let's take this image, right? This is a photo, and then I made it black and white. And how my brain works right now while I'm painting is I'm trying to value everything within a group, right? So the green is one value grouping, the floor is one, and the concrete is one, just so there's the readability. Just so we don't get distracted by noise, and the readability is very clear. And same thing for this one, there's a lot of value grouping because this area is grouped, that area is grouped, because I push out the values and group them together so that they don't take the focus away from the main entrance. Let's see. So after that one, what I did is I added some greenery, as you notice here. Let me just turn it off, everything. All right. So just added some greenery in the outside area, just so there's a connection to the greenery inside. And for this one as well, so what I did is I just put it in first thing. And as you notice, right, it's already color graded because of the VFX, right, that we made the folder. You notice that it's already integrated into it. The first thing I did is, and every time make it darker. Every time I do that, I press Control Y, which makes it black and white. And to be able to do that, you just go to View, Proof Setup, Custom, and then you go to Device to Simulate, and then dot gain 30%. And every time you press Control Y, it just switches from both modes so that you can just focus on the values. And one thing I noticed while working on The Last of Us 2 is there's a lot of, like values from vegetation is a bit darker than from concrete or from water or whatever. So these are all stuff that I've been doing a lot. That's why I'm not looking as much into reference, but I suggest that you guys do that if you're not well versed with handling stuff like this. And then the second part I did is I just added some light that's coming in, so that again we make like the 3D form. There's light area here, there's some bounce light there, and so that it's more implemented into the image itself. And then what I did is I took this image that I had from some grass. I cut out the ground parts, and the cool thing about this is this is what they call happy accidents, right? Like all these cuts and stuff just makes it way more easier for me to make the shapes, because the shapes are natural. The shapes are from a photo, so that just saves me time instead of figuring out what the shape should look like. So after I did that, all I did is, again, make it darker, and then placing it within the areas that I want the greenery to be. So usually there's like steps that I do. First thing I do is just make it darker to the level of the shadows, and then the second part is adding light back to it, just like here. So, and I noticed that it should be a bit more yellowish because the light itself is yellow, and then maybe the opacity a bit more strong like this. And as you notice, just by being super careful and kind of also being careful of which photos I'm using, the image is already looking really good compared to if I just did this without any planning or any reference research. And then the second part, what I did is I just added I put a lighten layer, and then I added some small hazing and fogging inside, so that it kind of merges everything together as well. And the same here, I just have it on a normal layer, and what I basically did is I just made it I chose like a dark color from the image itself, and all I did is just play with the what's it called, the gradient tool, sorry, and then kind of darken out some areas where the light isn't hitting it. Oh, this is a mistake. Alright, so far so good. And then on top of everything, just painting out some areas, merging it together, like I did on these areas here. And then I think I darken it even a bit more. Let's see, oh yeah, that's why you see it like this. Right, and darken it even more and paint it on top of it. You should notice here. And then added like a gradient map on top of it, a noise map. And if we compare the two right now, look at this. I just adjusted the whole light, and as you noticed, it's a usable concept. Maybe not as detailed as we want it to be, but it's a perfect example of how to approach, color grading or relighting a photo or your scene. So important rule to take a note when you're painting over your 3D is never be a slave to the 3D. If you find a photo which is better, or if you just paint over which is better for your image making, always do that, because the 3D is just a base that we're going to use. Alright guys, see you at the next video.